Welcome to Linear 3, the stereotyping section in our last part of the work. We'll be discussing the use and characteristics of stereotypes in the media, but I've included a lot more theory than that, so let's get started. So firstly, at the bottom of page 247, they talk about that stereotyping is most used in the theory to describe the effect of media on users' perception. Why do people think about certain people in that way? And they say in media studies, stereotyping falls under the representation, how the media represents people and groups. In South Africa, stereotyping is largely affecting the audience because of the racial, ethnic, and language tension between groups. So, what is the role of the South African media in sustaining and often creating negative perceptions? Do you believe that South Africa still has sustained stereotypes in the media? On the next page, we discuss what is stereotype, and we have a working definition by O'Sullivan et al. 1994 and examples. The examples, they've been portrayed in bullet form, and you can read through them. And why do people think about groups in this way? Why do stereotypes exist? We have two theories that can kind of break down the two possible answers of why people have stereotypes at all, and we have categorized people. We have Claude Levi Strauss, who has decided to go with a binary opposition theory, and Roland Barthes, who has a way of interpreting in his theory the socially constructed meanings and values. When we think about binary opposition, we're also thinking about the role of myth in terms of in his theory, and what is meant by binary oppositions is the meaning of something depends on its opposite. Usually in movies, we will see good and evil, right and wrong, love and hate, night and day. Therefore, in terms of what they're just putting across here, is usually there is binary oppositions in structural media content. Levi Strauss is saying that there is a collective practice of laws, rules directed to individuals in a society. Therefore, society has a collective existence, and that shapes the individual and determines his or her individuality. I am who I am on the basis of what society allows me to be. The individual understands the need to abide to what the society laws and the collective laws and practices that exist are there. And anything that threatens collectivismus is experienced as negative and in opposition. So if you're not going to act like everybody and behave like everybody, and in a sense in here look like everybody, then you are in opposition to that. Human nature is to feel threatened by anything that is other from the collective whole to which one belongs, and the reaction usually is to retreat from, combat, or humiliate the other. In terms of in the structural analysis, we uncover the underlying structures of why do people have these stereotypes. In terms of Levi Strauss, he breaks this down further that it could be the analysis of the laws of descent and marital laws of indigenous tribes, the analysis of totemism and the role of totemism in society, and the analysis of myth in society. So in terms of binary opposition, they just say that it can express them in differing thinking, behavior, and values. The thinking, behavior, and values are reflected in today's symbolic works, including media. And we have an example on page 250 of how the South African media has formed with journalists and constitute their way of thinking. The collective values on the basis of opposition is all in media content, such as in television genres like soap operas and comedies and police dramas can show binary opposition, where society can attach these oppositions like that is the good guy, that is the evil guy, that is the hero, and that is the villain. In structures media text, we also have drama text that can show propaganda in that sense. And how does a newspaper handle binary opposition in its editorials without being explicitly in opposition to a person or movement or any particular issue there? An editorial can be opposition in perspective and in style of writing. In crime stories, it's very more implicit that there's going to be victims and there's going to be criminals, and us versus them divide. I provided a binary opposition example that can show that there are two sort of things to look at here, such as peace versus violence, and life versus death, and so on. And the strong message portrayed here is don't carry knives. The binary opposition that could be portrayed here is male versus female, wealth versus poverty, old versus young, peace versus war, and so on. So in Levi Strauss's opinion of opposition, we look at the world in terms of in the opposition theory. This is done from the perspective of one's own values is rooted in the values of the group of a collective existence, and anything that goes against the group is in opposition and is seen as the other. Because we have emphasized that everyone should, in terms of in this theory, everyone should be the same, anything that is other is seen as something to combat, something to humiliate, and therefore can result in a stereotype view of others and the world. If there is an unwillingness to openness and to focus on similarities always in the group, then it will result in a restricted view of reality and the world. So Levi Strauss is saying that binary opposition is always at play in media content. And because it might have been ingrained very early that we should all have a collective value in terms of ideas and beliefs and in that system, anything in opposition, and opposition has always been shown in sort of media texts, this is why people have developed a stereotype view of reality and the world. Based on the theory of binary opposition, stereotypes are the result of emphasizing oppositions. Next, we look at Levi Strauss's myth and how we know what a myth is. It's usually going to be some sort of fable or stories passed down from generation to generation. And we use the example here of Red Riding Hood and how there is a meaning being reinforced here and spread around in societies, such as that you don't go off with strangers and be aware of strangers in that sense. This is to warn children to just be very wary, and this has been reinforced in society. This is a value that they should have. The older you become is in this sort of theory, Levi Strauss is the older you become, the less we understand what exactly does stranger mean. In terms of in a children's fable, this just means a wolf that wants to, eat you or eat grandma in this case. But the older you become, what is considered to be a stranger could be another race, another sexual orientation, another gender, and so on. Therefore, it's important to note that society sees the myth like Red Riding as acceptable behavioral pattern and a way of thinking, and that myths can reinforce how society thinks. It's to show this that it's also debatable that television is one of our biggest narrators of myth. And that concludes Levi Strauss's section. Please let your lecturer know if you have any questions about this particular work so far. But it is to cover, first and foremost, that Levi Strauss stresses that there is binary oppositions that can be at play here, that it can be shown in media content that you would have a victim and a criminal or the villain, a hero. There could be war and peace. And because we've been taught that, or at least it's been ingrained in terms of this theory, that there's a collective existence among everyone, that everyone should be similar. And the minute someone is other or different, that should be restricted in that view and it's not acceptable. And then in terms of this, you can look in your lesson plan and spot any binary oppositions or oppositions in that sense in your movies or TV shows that you want to choose. So that's a little activity idea. Levi Strauss also talks about myth and talks about how there are certain myths that we've been growing up with, such as Red Riding Hood, and how that can sort of reinforce those values, that even though the value, the moral of it was don't go off with strangers, what is considered to be the stranger could very well be something else. And therefore we should stay away from the stranger. We should be warned against it. And in this case, we end off Levi Strauss, and we're now going to move on to Roland Barthes and his role and how he interprets myth.